At the 47th Academy Awards, which awarded the films of 1974, the Best Actor lineup was a murderer's row of budding legendary talent, including Al Pacino, Jack Nicholson, Dustin Hoffman, and Albert Finney, all nominated for films the Academy loved, including The Godfather Part 2, Chinatown, Lenny, and Murder on the Orient Express. The precursors indicated Nicholson had this one in the bag for his performance in Chinatown, but the ultimate winner was none of those men, as Ms. Glenda Jackson announced.
The winner is Art Carney in...
Art Carney was primarily known for his television work on The Honeymooners in decades past, and had barely done any film work up to that point. But his performance as the elderly Harry Coombs in Harry and Tonto struck a chord with Oscar voters, and while the audience gave him a standing ovation as he walked up to accept the award, the win has puzzled movie fans in the decades since, especially considering the competition he beat. So how did Art Carney win? We'll explore all this and more on today's episode of How Did They Win?
20th Century Fox invites you to hit the road with Harry and Tonto.
Are you Jewish?
No, I'm into Zen Buddhism these days.
You want to chase around a little bit?
And Harry and Norman.
You taking any of these drugs? LSD? Psilocybin? Heroin? You're a good boy, Norman.
Harry and Ginger.
Ginger, how old are you?
16.
Well, I guess I don't know what it's like to be 16 these days.
Neither do I.
Hello, and welcome back to How Did They Win? A bonus series from And the Runner-Up Is, where we discuss any old Oscar category that someone from our Patreon group wants us to talk about. And this time we're taking this from Mark Lamb, who asked us to talk about the 1974 Best Actor race, where Art Carney won Best Actor over a whole bunch of great actors. And joining me today, I have my two old favorites who have been on this many times, who I cannot do this without, truly. First of all, we have the person who joined me for E.T. the Extraterrestrial and the films of 1982, The Lion in Winter, and the films of 1968. Like I said, all those other How Did They Wins. Please welcome back Amy Thomasson.
Hello.
Hello, welcome back.
Thank you.
Yes. And, of course, the person who joined me for Life of Pi and the films of 2012, Howard's End, 1992, MASH, 1970, and High Noon, 1952, Tom O'Brien.
Hi, everybody.
Hello, welcome back. But I have another guest, believe it or not. Not two, but three. And this is someone you have heard a few times as well on this show, who wanted to be on this because specifically of this race and this winner. You first heard him talking about La La Land in the films of 2016, Network and 1976, and some episodes of On Second Thought for The Big Short and for Milk. Please welcome Charlie Bright.
Hey there.
Welcome to this gang of nerds.
I will wear that label with pride.
Yes, absolutely. So, we are talking about 1974 Best Actor. To run down the list of nominees, we have Art Carney for Harry and Tonto, the winner. Albert Finney for Murder on the Orient Express, Dustin Hoffman for Lenny, Jack Nicholson for Chinatown, and Al Pacino for The Godfather Part 2. Pretty much a legendary lineup that still holds up to Oscar history, but this win is controversial, to say the least. Because when I sent this out on Twitter earlier today, asking people, would you have picked Art Carney to win? Pretty much everyone said they would have predicted, or picked, I should say, somebody else, and that it does not hold up to Oscar history. But we will discuss that today, and we will start things off by going in order from what I presume to be least likely to have won to the winner, Art Carney. And we are starting with Albert Finney, who played Hercule Poirot in Murder on the Orient Express.
After the shock of the body's discovery, Mrs. Armstrong gave premature birth to a stillborn child and herself died in the process. Her husband, Colonel Armstrong, once a brave officer in the Scots Guard, shot himself. And Mrs. Armstrong's personal maid, who came wrongly under suspicion of complicity, threw herself from a bedroom window and she died too. That's five.
Then I thank heaven that Cassetti, who spilled so much blood in his lifetime, should have his own blood spilled now.
Leading up to the Oscars, his only precursor nomination was at BAFTA, his home turf. This is an adaptation of the Agatha Christie murder mystery novel about a murder that happens on the Orient Express, which is a train filled with a bunch of very interesting strangers, and we meet the detective, Hercule Poirot, who's investigating the murder. So we have Albert Finney here doing an accent. I think it's supposed to be Belgian. He's got
it
a
is
hat.
Supposed to be Belgian.
He's got a mustache.
Which is actually French, so...
Right. So what do we think? Let's start with our honored guest, Charlie, here. What do you think of the great Albert Finney here?
Well, Albert Finney is one of my favorite actors, and this is actually the first film I ever saw with him way back when. I remembered really liking it, and I actually just watched it again the other day. It was the first time I had seen it in years. And I actually found his performance very charming. You know, when you think about, bringing to life a character like Hercule Poirot and how I don't know if there had been any other filmed adaptations of Poirot's material from Agatha Christie, but I found it very charming and kind of whimsical. I know some people think that it's very what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of just over the top, especially with the accent. But I thought, considering it's an Agatha Christie character, I thought that just added to the playfulness of the character.
Yes, very good. And how about you, Amy? What do you think of this performance?
I thought it was very good. My introduction to Albert Finney was the movie Annie when I was a little girl. And then I saw him in Two for the Road with Audrey Hepburn. I think that's my personal favorite performance of his, especially since I'm not a fan of Tom Jones. Sorry, Tom Jones enthusiasts in the audience. But he was very charming, and it was a very sweet and fun movie. If I had seen it in 1974, I don't think I would have thought, oh my God, he has to be nominated for an Oscar for this. Just my opinion. He's one that I would take out and substitute another performer.
What about you, Tom? What do you think of Albert Finney here?
The first time I saw it, I thought he was, and this may be the word, Charlie, that you were looking for, hammy. It was just kind of big. Everybody delivers big performances, except for, ironically, the person who won for this, Ingrid Bergman. That's an Oscar win I just also don't understand.
Agreed.
Agreed.
But as soon as I saw the Kenneth Branagh remake several years ago, Finney looks like a model of underplaying compared to what Branagh was doing with that mustache way out to here. It's like, I think it's a very good performance. He's a superb actor. He really should have had a couple of other nominations. I think he only wound up with 3. I may be mistaken, but
no, I think it was like 5 or something.
5 or something? Okay. And so, but nonetheless, I agree with Amy. This would be the one I would take out for another performer.
Yeah. So I do think this is a very fun performance. It's very theatrical, and he's full of gusto. But yeah, I think I would agree on the whole that when you look at the character itself, I think there's not a lot of depth there, and I think it's just the story and how it's created that a lot of these characters are mostly just character types and not necessarily like fully three-dimensional people very much, with like rich backstories, at least for him. And he does get the long monologue at the end where he's revealing his big theory, and I think he makes that dynamic enough that you're kind of fascinated just watching him and all of his little weird mannerisms. But on the whole, I would agree that looking at the competition overall, there's just not quite enough there, even though he is very, very fun and a very clear highlight of this film. I also really like Lauren Bacall, for that matter. I think she's very fun standout.
I thought she looked like she was having a time of her life.
Oh, yes. Which is nice to see. But in this cast, he certainly absolutely stands out, and you can see why, an actor's branch would be loving everything he's doing in this film. Yeah.
Absolutely.
But
and as far as performances from the 70s,
yeah.
And when you had talked about Dog Day Afternoon, you think about those great gritty performances of the 70s, and then you just have this charming,
right,
sweet, fun performance, which is so different from the other performances, especially that year.
Yeah. Well, his narrative this year, I think, is that he's already in the club, nominated for Tom Jones in 1963. So he's kind of the celebrated British actor of the bunch with this very fun, over-the-top theatrical performance. But I do think clearly the nomination was the reward. Unfortunately for him, he would never win an Oscar, which is sad.
I find he's a great actor, but if we're talking about great actors from Britain of that time, I'm not as outraged that Finney never won as I am as like Peter O'Toole or Richard Burton. I don't. It's just my humble opinion. I'm not as outraged. Like, it's ridiculous and a crime that Richard Burton and Peter O'Toole never won an Academy Award.
I don't disagree with you about Peter O'Toole and Richard Burton. But I think that Finney never winning is very much. It's one that always bugged me. I've always I such a great presence, and he always brings something just so interesting to his characters. And this goes beyond, the nominations he received. You look at a movie like Before the Devil Knows You're Dead, much later in his career, and he still just knocks it out of the park at every moment. Yeah. He's so rich as an actor, and I think the reason why I always it was attached to him as someone who never won is because I think more people would have used Richard Burton and Peter O'Toole as like go-tos, in demonstrating oversights of the Academy, and the fact that but at least Peter O'Toole got an honorary Oscar at least, which he certainly deserved. And that was actually the thing that really bugged me, that even though Finney never won, the fact that he never got the honorary one. So it's very possible he would not have shown up to that ceremony because he never went to the Oscars either.
Right.
But I suspect he came pretty close with Aaron Brockovich.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, I do. I don't know if this is a hot take. I think he should have won for Aaron Brockovich. I think he's so great in that film.
Who did he lose to that year?
Benicio del Toro in Traffic.
Oh, that year was one of my least favorite Academy Award years.
Yeah.
I really don't like anything that was nominated that year. So
I always found that as someone who I never got Benicio del Toro's performance in Traffic. It's just one where I'm like, okay, he's good, but I'm not understanding this whole, sweeping mentality, because he just swept that season. Even at SAG, where he was nominated and lead, he won.
Right.
And so that was just one that never made sense to me. And I'm just like, but Albert Finney's right there.
I felt that way that year with Julia Roberts. I'm still like, I really feel like I'm missing something with that movie, because I've watched it. I've tried to enjoy it. I've tried to think maybe she deserved it, but she Is she the one that beat Ellen Burstyn?
Yes.
Oh, I mean,
Yeah.
They're both great. They're both great for very different reasons, but that is not what we're talking about today.
Yeah. All right.
Hold on, I have another 20 minutes on this I want to go into.
Let's rewrite this train, this Orient Express here.
good one.
Yeah. So, honestly, yeah, I agree that he had many opportunities. I think he could have gotten there, could have won, but just never materialized. I mean, Big Fish, I think he's even great in that too. So, but
Yeah.
anyway, I think it's safe to say that he was almost definitely fifth in this race just because there wasn't a big narrative there and it just wasn't enough of a performance to really get there. So let's move on to number 4 in this race. Arguably, I would say that really any of the 2 through 4 are almost interchangeable for certain reasons, but Dustin Hoffman as Lenny Bruce in Lenny.
There he stands in his underwear, pleading like a dummy. Please, will you touch it once? Come on, you never touch it anymore. Just touch it once. You want me to touch it when I don't feel like touching it? Even when I got a headache? Yeah. You want me to touch it even when I don't get any pleasure from it? Yeah, that's right. I'm a dummy. I gotta get it touched, right? If I wait for you to touch it, you'd never touch it. Oh, come on, I touch it a lot. No, you don't. You think you touch it a lot? You used to touch it a lot. And now it's a big favor to get you to touch it, man. It's gotta be like a big holiday, like Armistice Day, right? Well, all right. If you're gonna make me feel guilty, bring it over here, I'll touch it. No, don't do me any favors. I'll just touch it myself.
He is nominated at the Golden Globes and BAFTA, does not win anything going into the Oscars. And he is playing the very famous stand-up comedian Lenny Bruce, who was very known for his free-thinking, sort of risky style of comedy. And he's arrested for obscenity multiple times, and he has trouble with his marriage. And the film really jumps around between multiple timelines in Lenny's life, and it's all filmed in very stark black and white by the great Bob Fosse. So let's go to the Fosse head of this group first. Let's talk to Amy first. What do we think of Dustin Hoffman and Lenny?
I surprisingly had never seen this movie before. Cabaret, I was just saying, is in my top 5 on the Amy Thomasson Top 100. I just saw, for the first time, I mean, beginning to end, watched All That Jazz. A fan from Canada sent me the DVD of it, so thank you, Michael from Canada. It's so strikingly Bob Fosse, and I think it's just another great performance by Dustin Hoffman. There's nothing that man cannot do. And if you look at his work, he's just, I mean, out of the park every single time. And he absolutely deserved a nomination. And if I could do a 3-way tie with him, and I'm not going to spoil it, 2 others, easily. He's amazing.
Mm-hmm. What do you think, Tom? Is he amazing?
Yes, he is.
Okay.
He's, to go from Benjamin Braddock to Ratso Rizzo to a few other things on the way, and then this. When you first saw him as Benjamin Braddock, do you think he could be capable of something like this? He was excellent in The Graduate, but it was easy to type him as a certain kind of character. Not here. I find Lenny, it's a tough movie to love, but it's a great movie to admire. There's such integrity in the filmmaking. And I think that Hoffman's performance mirrors that. And he has great chemistry with Valerie Perrine. I suspect that actors admired it more than they liked it. But it's so worthy of admiration, and just one of the jewels of Hoffman's really remarkable career. I think he's just wonderful in it, and I think Fosse's direction it's hard and cold and right.
It fits the lifestyle of the character.
Yeah, it's raw.
Weird, dark, artsy, hard to watch film.
Right.
But that's like Lenny Bruce. Hard to, you can't really say you liked it. You just experience it.
Yeah.
What do you think, Charlie?
This one takes me back, because I was telling you actually over email, Kevin. Would you believe I owned this movie on Laserdisc? Yeah, it was my father.
Bravo.
It was my father's when he was a member of the Columbia House Laserdisc Club. And that's not a joke. That actually existed back in the 80s. And I remember seeing this movie, and I did not know who Lenny Bruce was when I saw this movie. And so when I saw this, and I thought it was such an interesting character to pursue, especially when you look at the people who were shaping stand-up at the time of 1974. But I guess probably the biggest people that were shaping stand-ups were two of the all-time greats, George Carlin and Richard Pryor. And you got to think to yourself, if Lenny Bruce hadn't done what he did, they would not be as prominent. Carlin and Pryor would not have been as prominent as they ended up being. Because you could also see that sort of transformation, and I think this movie does it very well, showing Bruce starting out as a very buttoned up guy, like the character we're seeing now on Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, to a much more gritty, much more again, I can't think of the word, but much more pointed and ruthless in what he did. And he was talking about, problems that, still, are still problems to this day, racism, homophobia. That's the one that's the scene that always, when he talks about the gay teacher that was fired, that's one that always stands out to me. And I really thought he brought the perfect amount of charm, but also darkness to that character. And of course, the ending of the movie, which the photo of Bruce after he overdosed, I think he brought that brilliantly to this role, and I thought it was just a magnificent performance.
Yes, I think Hoffman is very good here. I think he's got the very distinct accent work and the mannerisms down very well. I was looking at just old clips of Lenny Bruce himself, and he just has that very similar kind of swagger down pat, I think, here. And going to the Marvelous Mrs. Maisel thing that Charlie brought up, I don't know if everyone here has seen that, but, that series does have Lenny Bruce represented with Luke Kirby playing him. He won an Emmy last year for playing him, for that matter. And I think Luke Kirby is really excellent at not only having the mannerisms and the voice, but also actually looking like him. And I don't know if Dustin Hoffman truly transforms in that way as much. But regardless, I do think he has the essence of Lenny Bruce in him. And I also think that the film and that Bob Fosse kind of help to show the differences in different parts of his life, and showing the range of Dustin Hoffman really in those moments, and especially with those personal moments with Valerie Perrine, and then the end of his life when he's just drunk and just a mess. And I just feel like he gets so much to do in every single minute of this. He has so many great stand-up moments too, where he's just he himself is a performer performing, and that is another thing that is very much actor bait.
Oh yes.
And I think that black and white cinematography really helps in establishing, especially when he's performing in clubs, really that the feel, and even though you can't smell it, you almost feel like you can smell the clubs by the way it's filmed,
and the stickiness in the air,
exactly.
That stench.
And just to piggyback off what you were talking about with Luke Kirby, what I think is interesting about Luke Kirby's performance is that the way that he performs it, you can see the foreshadowing of the darkness that's about to come for Lenny Bruce's career, which Hoffman actually does portray in that performance.
And I can't think up to that point. I can't think of any other movies that were shot that way, kind of like documentary style.
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of any other movie at the time. Now it seems like a lot of movies have kind of picked up on that, but that's why I'm like, I feel like I've seen movies shot like that, but I think I could see Fosse kind of coming up with that on his own.
And so the narrative for Dustin Hoffman here, he was nominated again. He was in The Club, nominated for Graduate and Midnight Cowboy. He's really among this class of great actors from the 60s and 70s, the new wave of New Hollywood is what
he already should have won at least once by that point. He should have won in 1969.
I would argue he should have won in 1967. Controversial? I don't know. Not what we're talking about today.
I'm not going to touch that one. I'm stepping back.
All right.
I'm stepping back.
I love him in that.
1967 is a year I am crazy passionate about.
Yes.
Like that's in my opinion the best year ever.
Yes. But either way, I think the Academy was not quite ready yet to reward Dustin Hoffman.
Well, he was also going through this. Very hate phase of his love-hate relationship with the Academy.
Right.
He, when he was nominated, he refused to attend the ceremony. He basically said almost verbatim what George C. Scott said when he was up for Patton. And he was apparently, I guess, so vicious in what he said about the Oscars that the host of the ceremony that year, I believe was Frank Sinatra, actually took the time to call him out in the middle of the ceremony. Basically, say, screw you, Dustin Hoffman, we're awesome.
Oh my gosh, I love Frank Sinatra. I'm so torn right now.
And there you have those two different modes of Hollywood.
But he did, even when he won for Kramer versus Kramer, didn't he say like the competition itself is stupid? And he made a comment like, I refuse to believe that I beat like Robert Duvall.
Right.
I refuse to believe that I beat Peter Sellers. I refuse to believe that I beat I can't remember who the other person was, and then Al Pacino. I refuse to believe that Robert Duvall lost tonight. It was because that was the big thing about would he actually win for Kramer versus Kramer was because of his past comments about the Academy.
Right. Yeah, it was an interesting speech in that it was a little modest and also pointed at the Academy, and he had sort of the best of both worlds with that speech.
I have to say that I love that you, like me, can quote the Dustin Hoffman acceptance speech.
See, you're a nerd.
There's someone else out there who gets me and who has watched this on YouTube more than once.
Honey, we will make a great pair.
Exactly.
Thank you for listening to this preview of How Did They Win, a bonus series from And the Runner-Up Is. If you liked what you heard and want to hear more, please go to patreon.com/andtherunnerup.is and become a patron. Only $3 a month will get you access to bonus episodes, a Slack channel, and early access to regular episodes. Thank you so much for your consideration.